The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu, like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davison, Lynette's is open for takeaway, noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's. Hey, greetings, everybody. Welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I'm your host, Craig Fahle. Glad to have you with me today as we break down the big stories in the week's news. And man, Michigan once again decides that it wants to be the laughing stock of America with this week, which I know are going to get into, but I should introduce my esteemed panelists today. As usual, we have Allan Lengel, editor and co-founder of Deadline Detroit, with us. Hello, Allan.
Hello. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Also, Nancy Derringer, Deadline Detroit contributor and author of the wonderful Deadline Detroit 313 newsletter. Welcome, Nancy.
The awesome letter.
What's that?
The awesome.
It is awesome.
I think it's one of the best
awesome
newsletters around.
Yeah.
Returning guest Saeed Khan, senior lecturer at Wayne State University, is with us once again. Hello, sir.
Great to be back. Thanks, Craig.
Absolutely. And a newcomer, Candice Fortman, who is the executive director of Outlier Media, also formerly of WDET. Candice, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
It's great to be here with you today, Craig.
Well, and real quick, what's the number people need to text if they want Outlier news?
Yeah, absolutely. You text Detroit to 73224. It's a free service that is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Very, very cool. And it's a great service in the community, and glad that you are doing it and in charge of these things these days. So, but let's get started. Rudy Giuliani and the Four Seasons Landscaping Company World Tour continued this week, coming to our state here in Michigan, up to Lansing. Let's talk a little bit about this, because the president obviously is still spouting off these conspiracy theories about a rigged election and how the election was stolen. We had 2 days of testimony in Lansing that bordered on the ridiculous. Well, bordered isn't the right word. It was all ridiculous. All of it has been debunked at this point in time. Yet the Michigan legislature saw fit to give these people a platform after the vote has already been certified here in the state. Nancy, I'm going to start with you on this one, just because, I mean, this was stupidity of the highest order that we got to witness the other day.
Yeah, it really was. And it just shows how the certain elements of the Michigan Republican Party have literally put their testicles in escrow to a certain, the base, as we like to say. I mean, there was no reason to have this hearing. I mean, the vote is over. Biden won. It's been certified. All the counties have certified. The state has certified. What is the point of this? And the damage that is being done by this is unbelievable. I mean, they're taking a pillar of democracy and just hitting it with a sledgehammer. And sooner or later, that's going to come back and bite them in the posterior. So,
well, and Candice, I see you nodding along here. I mean, and I was watching it just because it was captivating television, and just listening to one person say something stupid after another over and over again. We got everything on display there. You had xenophobia, racism. What else do we have?
All of the top three things I love in a hearing. I mean, my question is, was there an open bar at the Capitol? Was it sponsored by Tito's Vodka? I have a lot of questions about what was happening and inspiring what we were seeing on that floor that day, because that is like anything I think any of us have ever seen in one circus.
Well, yeah, one circus is about right. And the thing is, circuses, though, usually the clowns are entertaining. This was infuriating. These were angry clowns. And that's not usually what you go to the circus for. But we created an internet star, though. Our own Melissa Carone.
I know I've already been able to say something, but I just want to add one other thing. It's really tempting to go for the cheap laugh here. And my cheap laugh is Rudy tried to roofie her and misjudge the dosage. But I think the truer substance that particular woman, Melissa Carone, was drunk on was fame, which is, of course, like the most powerful drug of all. I mean, within 3 or 4 days, she's been all over right-wing media. And, there's something about seeing your face on the Lou Dobbs show while Lou Dobbs tries his hardest to figure out what you're actually saying. It's a very strange interview. That just makes people crazy. Go ahead. Sorry.
I watched the whole thing, and I have to say, initially you start hearing these allegations, and you're like, oh my God, this is our, and then you start to parse it, and then you realize, like, the first person who talked, she says, I wouldn't let people vote. She was helping with the early voting. I wouldn't let people vote without an ID. There's no way. The Michigan law says you have to have an ID, which is not true. Well, you don't have to have an ID. Then she says, I saw ballots where people had just registered on November 3rd when the deadline is November 2nd, when in fact the deadline is November 3rd. And then the crazy woman, Caron, whatever, where she starts saying the votes, they were running the ballots through 3 times. They say, well, how many times do you think? She said, probably 30,000 times, 3 times. So there were probably 100,000 votes. Now, the lawmaker who was questioning her is a conservative lawmaker, and I give him credit. He was the only one on the other side who was really trying to be fair and balanced. And he was like, well, it can't be off that much on the voter rolls. And she's like, yes, 100,000 check. And then later,
maybe you took that poll book and did something crazy to it.
Well, and you got to do your little. Did ya?
Did ya?
Right.
I signed a paper that says I can go to prison if I'm wrong.
An affidavit. I signed an affidavit. Did you?
Did you?
Did you?
So later the woman ahead of I can't remember her name now. The woman who's the head of the canvasser, the chair of the Wayne County canvasser, she testifies, and that same lawmaker asked, "Well, how many votes do you think Detroit was off by?" And she says, "About 400."
Yeah.
Right.
As opposed to 100,000. So,
it was a parade of people testifying there that had either anecdotal or basically hearsay. Well, I heard a guy say that this happened. That's what hearsay is, everybody. It's not admissible in court. But I think the most telling thing about this hearing, especially when Giuliani got up there, is one of the Democrats there said, hey, why don't we swear them in? And the gavel hammering that went down from the chair. I mean, he had that gavel ready to go. And I almost wanted to bring one today so I could smash some crap behind here so you could see how fervently he was smashing that gavel down. Like, there's no way we're going to be telling the truth in this hearing. We're not going to demand. I mean, it was
no perjury traps.
Well, and it was just ridiculous. And like I said, a parade of clowns, one after the other. Saeed, I mean, and we'll save this for a little bit later, but like I said, there was a little bit of racism on display too. And this woman who was testifying proved that, you can be racist, whatever race you are.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm getting calls from around the world saying we're sending a chopper because you need to be evacuated. I mean, Michigan is going to be the venue for the next SEAL Team 6 in reverse. It's a cause for complete embarrassment that we're facing this, that we're having the spotlight on us, and the world is literally looking. Regarding Miss Hema Kolangani Reddy from Novi, Michigan, who astoundedly says, and by the way, do you think I look like Gandhi? Because apparently all of you think all Indians look alike. So, I mean, if I'm going to be mistaken for the Mahatma, I'm in trouble. But the fact that she then ups that by saying that she thinks all Chinese people look alike. I found Ted Lieu, the congressman, posted a wonderful meme where he juxtaposed Chairman Mao and Bruce Lee, just to show that with 1.4 billion people, there may be some diversity then. But I think the point that you're making in all seriousness, Craig, is one that I fear moving forward. Especially the Republican Party is now going to use as a tactic. They're well aware that 35% of Muslim Americans voted for Trump, despite the Muslim travel ban and all of the Islam hates us rhetoric. They've also spotted fissures within the Hispanic movement and among other people of color. So this is going to become a thing that is going to move forward into the midterms and certainly into 2024 as a point of exploitation.
Well, absolutely. And that's something that we'll get to in a little bit, because I do want to talk about the prospects of Trump 2024 in just a little bit, because, who knows? But I'm still trying to figure out what stage of grief the Republicans are in right now. Are they in the bargaining phase where they're trying to well, hey, maybe you'll take this one. Maybe you'll take this one. Or are they still in denial? Because the anger part's always been there. That's just built into the DNA, I think, right now. But I don't think they're going to get to acceptance for at least a decade on this one.
Well, according to the show Friends, according to the show Friends, I think strippers is like 3.5. So that might still be happening. Or for Rudy, it might have been 1.5. So,
but I'm still, amazed though that they held this hearing because it was ridiculous, but that they are willing to put themselves out there and willing to say publicly that, well, Detroit must have cheated. And again, it goes back to they're doing the same thing in Philadelphia. They're doing the same thing in Milwaukee. Black people live there. Therefore, they must have cheated. They can't fathom that, they're like, well, how come I didn't see any votes for Trump there? I'm like, because nobody likes Trump here. Nobody in the city of Detroit really is a big fan of Donald Trump. And let's, they're crowing about getting 12% of the African-American vote on the Republican side, saying, hey, that's a big deal. I'm like, you're only getting 12%. That means that almost 90% of the people hate your guts. That's not good. Yeah.
That's how it's been in Washington, D.C. I mean, if you see every election, I mean, the Democrat gets 92%. That's the way it is in urban centers. I mean, they're predominantly Democratic. I mean,
And that is an argument for a less hardcore Republican Party. I mean, I think if a moderate Jack Kemp style Republican, came into Detroit and talked to people of color as though he recognizes that they are, legitimate, they are Americans with their own grievances and goals, and they want the same things for their family, they might do better in cities like Detroit. But as long as they keep putting up people like, well, I'll let Candice talk to that.
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, for me, John James was an interesting candidate and remains an interesting candidate, quite honestly. I think that if he were able to, if he would have been able to really make the connections that he was unable to make during this pandemic, if he was able to get into Black churches the way that he would have if the pandemic wasn't happening, I wouldn't say that he would have won, but I definitely think he would have given Peters an even bigger run for his money. And I know that John James is not going away, and I'm interested to see how his strategy shifts once the world opens back up and the kind of connections he makes with the Black community, specifically with the Black church.
My problem with John James is that he doesn't know who he is. He, in the first election, 2018, he was so far up Trump, he was attacking the other person, saying, he's not for Trump, I'm more for Trump. This time he comes around and says, they're trying to claim that I'm a toady for the man. He goes, I'm an independent man. I'm a 39-year-old Black man from Detroit. And yet, I mean, he lived, he born and raised in Detroit. Well, he moved from Detroit when he was 9 years old, moved to Southfield, gone to, went to Brother Rice in Bloomfield Hills. I feel like he's struggling to figure out who he is, and it comes off that way as insincere.
Well,
I mean, look, to be fair, I mean, it's difficult for him to wake up in the morning and decide, should I dress like Richard DeVos or Betsy DeVos?
Well, like I said, at least he conceded, which is something that obviously the president still has yet to do. And here's the weird thing. The president right now has a lot of enablers who are allowing this stuff to happen. Ron Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, made it pretty clear as to why nobody is saying anything. He said the quiet part out loud. He basically said, well, it's political suicide for me to do so, to acknowledge that Joe Biden won the election. And so he is willing to stand in the way of a peaceful transition of power so that he can save his political butt. Because he said this in an interview the other day. And I'm sorry, this is not something that I think we should allow to happen. Every single one of these people should be called up right now by every single reporter in Washington, say, just ask the question.
Who won the election?
Who won the election? Who won the election?
Right.
And don't let them sit there and say, well, it's important that we make sure that all the legal votes are counted. That's not acceptable. That's just like such a mealy-mouthed Weasley answer that, if Ron Johnson is willing to admit that Joe Biden won the election, he should be able to say it in public.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I was talking about before. The damage that they are doing. I mean, tens of millions of Americans think that this was a bogus election. And that is not, that's dangerous. That really is. And, so.
What really is puzzling and I think infuriating for me about this too, is that people are asking for, the Biden camp to prove a negative, right? I mean, it's like they have to sit there. Well, prove you didn't cheat.
Yeah.
That's not the way it works. I mean, our justice system is the exact opposite of this. And you've got a whole bunch of people saying, well, you should be able to prove you didn't cheat. No, you have no proof that anybody did cheat. You can't make the accusation and then have the defense have to prove that they didn't do something wrong. That's like, hey, Allan, when did you stop beating up your girlfriend? That's basically what it is. I mean, prove that you didn't.
What blows me away is that he keeps tweeting, how could I have lost? I got 74 million votes. And it's like, because the other guy got 80 million votes. It's just,
well, I think the other point, Nancy, and you're hearing this all the time, him making the statements about, well, I went to bed at night at 11 o'clock and I'd won. And then, if it wasn't for you meddling mail-in and absentee ballots, I would have won. Well, who prevented states from starting to count the mail-in ballots before November the 3rd?
Right.
Had they been able to do that, which was blocked by Republican legislatures, he could have gone to bed knowing that he lost.
Well, and Lee Chatfield at least has said, you know what, that was a mistake. We should have allowed them to start processing the ballots earlier, which would have meant that the count was actually taking place at the same time as the other votes were being counted, instead of having to wait until the polls closed. He said that was a mistake. And hopefully, if he's serious about that, he'll bring up a bill to amend that, because we're not going back to the way things used to be.
I was just going to say, didn't we talk about this a couple of weeks ago, where we said that, it's the pandemic, obviously, through the proportions all, just blew up the number. But the more people who vote absentee, the more people realize this is a better way to vote. It's you have more time, you have, you're not standing in a line, you can do it on your own schedule. And that's a good, that's a good thing. So
we're not going back.
The Trump complaint reminds me a little bit of the old joke of the couple in marriage counseling. And the woman says to the therapist, it'd be a perfect marriage if it weren't for my husband. And it's like Trump saying I would have won if it wasn't for the Democratic voters.
Yeah.
It's always the voters. It's always the voters that get in your way of winning. Right. And that's a hard thing to come to grips with. I am interested to see, though, how absentee voting, as we start to embrace it more, how the journalism cycle of endorsements will have to shift around it. Because if you've got all of these people voting absentee, I was still seeing endorsements come out, a week ahead of the election. That schedule is not going to work in this new world if more people are voting early. And I'm really interested to see when newsrooms are going to shift their editorial processes to meet up with demand for early voting.
Yeah, well, next time we get Kaffer on here, we'll ask her about that, Nancy Kaffer.
Yeah.
Because it is going to have to move up. You're absolutely right.
The Republicans have worked so hard on voter suppression, and I think they were overwhelmed by the absentee ballot this time around. It was just like the floodgate opened up, and they didn't know how to suppress that.
I'm
actually doing sort of a post-suppression.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the endorsements by newspapers to be behind the paywall.
It's coming. It's coming.
Absolutely coming.
It used to be when you actually had to pay for the newspaper. So, this is not a new concept, but that's something that, I subscribe for a reason, because I like my paper. Hey, let's move on here just a little bit, because there are a few people who are telling the truth to the president, and everyone who does gets canned. We have seen this a couple of times. This guy Krebs gone, and now, of course, Bill Barr potentially getting canned over basically saying the truth. Didn't find any evidence of fraud. And now, apparently, he had a very, very tough meeting with the president in the White House the other day, and I can only imagine what that was like. But Bill Barr might be able to salvage one shred of decency if he gets fired by this guy. That seems to be the only way that you can leave this administration with any bit of decency, is to get fired.
Attorney General for the last 5 weeks of this term, like,
You would just put the deputy.
I think it's me at this point.
yeah.
I mean, does it even matter? My grandmother used to say to me all the time, teeth and tongue fall out and they're the closest thing together. So I guess Bill Barr and Trump were just, their teeth and tongue in this case. And them falling out is no stranger than anything else in the world. But for Bill, I mean, all of this is such a circus of foolishness. And that anybody is even left in this ring is really remarkable to me. That people aren't just walking out en masse at this point is shocking.
I can solve that for you very easily, Candice.
Okay.
Because they're bad people. Okay. I mean, that's just, they're bad. They're terrible people.
That's the part I'm forgetting.
Well, and the fact that Bill Barr, though, is now getting lambasted by like Lou Dobbs and Fox News and OAN, which is another story entirely. That network is just basically, it's like Lord of the Rings for conservatives or something. It's complete fantasy. But, the Bill Barr, this is a guy who has been willing to go out over a legal line so many times for this president and basically do his bidding in a way that no attorney general ever has. And it's basically finally found that line that he wouldn't cross. And I mean,
I guess we all have one. We've been asking for months. What line will Bill Barr not cross? Apparently,
the bar is low. The bar for Barr is low.
Bar is low.
I mean, but he found that line, and God bless him for actually figuring out that he actually has some sort of an ethical spine. But he's still going to go down as one of the worst attorneys general in history. Clearly,
since John Mitchell, who went to prison for Nixon. I mean, it's interesting. Before he came in, a source of mine in Washington told me, "Hey, he's a pretty straight shooter. He's a good guy." Blah blah blah. And then afterwards, he's like, "Oh my gosh." This guy, and I mean, nobody expected that Jeff Sessions would display more integrity than William Barr. I mean, I give Jeff Sessions credit. I mean, his policies were horrible in a lot of ways, but he did stand up to Trump and say, "I'm recusing myself," and letting Mueller take over.
He got fired for it.
Yeah, and he got humiliated all the time. And it was funny that in the beginning it was like, you can't fire Jeff Sessions. Lindsey Graham was like, if he fires Jeff Sessions, that's the beginning of the end of his presidency. And then 2-3 months later, Lindsey Graham is like, well, he's the president. He can do whatever he wants.
Well, Barr's even outdone the last good sidekick attorney general I remember, which was Alberto Gonzales for George W. Bush.
Oh, yeah.
Who now is being invited on cable news to be a pundit as though he's Hammurabi.
Well, but to watch them eat their own like this, over something as stupid as suggesting this election was rigged is amazing to me. And I fully expect there to be more people that just say, I'm not going to have any part in this anymore. I really hope for the soul of America that there are people willing to actually do this en masse. I'd like to see, because this is crazy. There was an article, I think, in the New Yorker yesterday. It said the president is acting crazy. Why are we not talking about this? Because this is not sane behavior that we're witnessing right now. No. And it's causing damage, which we will get to in just a second. But one of the things we're talking about is preemptive pardons for Rudy Giuliani and the president's children. When everybody says, well, they haven't committed a crime, why would he pardon? Well, I don't know. Ivanka just sat down for a 5-hour deposition the other day. That's not something that happens with the FBI if they're not at least looking at something. But if he were to pardon his children,
I'll tell you, for the fact that they are doing a deposition of one of the president's children is a big, big deal. That just doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Notice he does not have a post. Biden does not have a job in this administration.
It doesn't happen when there's some assistant. I think they're all going on what Nixon, what Ford did with Nixon. Nixon was never charged with a crime, but he was given a blanket pardon even before. The attorney general was on CNN last night from New York, and she was basically saying, she's not holding back, and you can tell she is not a Trump lover. So, and the district attorney in Manhattan, Cyrus Vance, Is that
Yeah.
you know, it's I mean they're going to come after him. I mean the state the pardons do not include they don't have a reach over state charges. So I mean Trump's in trouble regardless.
I think he is in trouble as well. But, you know, the fact that you've got the possibility of him pardoning his children. First of all, his children should never have been anywhere near the White House anyway. They should have been as far away from the Oval Office as possible. And they're not. But
Ivanka is so pretty.
I know you love her, Nancy.
Her shoes. She makes beautiful shoes.
She's so pretty. And she looks really good when she poses with a pen.
John Kennedy got grief for appointing his brother, Robert Kennedy, as Attorney General, and his brother, you know, was extremely competent.
Well, yeah, you know, he was competent, went after Jimmy Hoffa and others, and you know, all sorts of stuff. But I mean, it just either way. But yeah, for all the talk of Hunter Biden and all that kind of stuff, when you actually look at the grift that was taking place. Oh, speaking of grift, you know, the Trump campaign right now is actually raising more money than they did in the last 2 months of the campaign. They're amassing a nice little war chest here for potential run in 2024. And here's the question I have. When, again, the party comes to this acceptance phase of the stages of grief, will they stick with President Trump, or will they just sort of, you know, wander off to other candidates? Because the RNC is already inviting a bunch of potential 2024 hopefuls to come to their next thing. In an effort, hopefully, to get some people off of Trump, I'm guessing, but I don't know.
That's a really interesting question. I subscribe to the Axios newsletter, and that was one of the things if I had a minute, I would dig it up. But somebody said, some anonymous Republican said he can run in 2024 if he wants, but it's not going to be easy for him in any way. He's not going to get a free pass. The media is going to be even harder on him. Other candidates are going to be hard on him. And, you know, and somebody said, well, when you say he's going to have trouble, does that mean legally, financially, or politically? And the source said, yes. Yes.
Yes. That's there. Let's also talk about what's going on in these last few weeks. This transition is normally kind of a dull period. You hear about cabinet appointments and all that kind of stuff. And hopefully the team that is leaving the office is assisting. I'm not convinced that that's happening right now. And Saeed, I'm glad you're here because I wanted to ask you about this killing of the nuclear scientist in Iran and, you know, what that does to the prospects of rejoining the treaty. What does that do for any possibility of any sort of nuclear agreement with Iran?
So there's a couple things here. First of all, Foreign Minister Javad Zarif of Iran has said that Iran will not come to the table with any preconditions. They are saying that if the United States wants to negotiate, they are willing to negotiate, but at the very least, they have to go back to the 2015 agreement. That's pretty massive. The second thing is that why did this happen and what impact is it going to have? And most people now are speculating that this is Bibi Netanyahu's a shot across the bows to Biden to not negotiate and not change the status quo in the region. Part of it is because it's unprecedented how much people are even saying that and putting it on the doorstep of Israel and the Mossad. Otherwise, usually these things are really kept far more concealed and quiet. So that kind of bravado then indicates that Israel isn't as concerned, or perhaps even in some cases emboldened to say that it might have been them. I see this as being far more problematic for a President Biden. He has, I think, the right instincts that he wants to negotiate with Iran, and he also wants to negotiate with China. The fact that he's picked as his NSA Jake Sullivan, who says containment and clash with China is not the way to go. We need to find areas of cooperation. I can see that happening in places like Afghanistan and also Iran. Look, I mean, when Trump pulled out of the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, and the TPP, which was supposed to be a firewall against China, what has it caused? It's caused all of the Asian Pacific countries to join together with China without inviting the United States to a new regional cooperation agreement. And with the imposition of even harsher sanctions after pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal that Trump did, Iran went into the welcoming arms of Beijing. Beijing has said, we're going to give you $400 billion over 25 years, which is $16 billion a year. Now, if Biden can go ahead and give a carrot to Iran saying, look, we lifting the sanctions can go ahead and double that with the kind of commerce. I think Iran is always more interested in working with Western countries than it is China. But we have to really wonder if that train's left the station.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Netanyahu, who is used to getting his way, and he has gotten his way with this administration, did not get it with Obama. And I think he's trying to set the table again that we set the policy, not the U.S. And the problem is that Netanyahu is someone not to be trusted. He's very manipulative. And I have a lot of cousins in Israel who are not fans of Netanyahu. And I think Biden's going to have to put his foot down because he saw what happened in the Obama administration, that he was very, very Netanyahu was very manipulative, and it was not good and in the end, it's not good for Israel, really.
It's interesting to me to watch how this is all unfolding. Amongst the first foreign leaders to actually congratulate Joe Biden on his victory were the Saudis, who had, of course, been, the big friends of Donald Trump, but they recognize what's going on here. Did
you see the conversation between, I think it was Trump was talking to Netanyahu after the election on speakerphone, and he kept talking about Sleepy Joe, and he was trying to get Netanyahu to take the bait and call him Sleepy Joe or laugh at him or something. And Netanyahu was just like, well, it's just kind of, somebody said it's like watching a couple change their relationship status too. It's complicated in real time.
Yeah, that's about right. And like I said, I do not envy the job that Joe Biden and his team are going to have when it comes to foreign policy upon taking office, because of everything that's been done.
What Saeed said, though, is so true, though. This America first, take care of ourselves, that's a very bumper stickery kind of attitude to have about foreign policy. But as he pointed out, if America steps back, somebody else is going to step up. And, we are in a world community, and it doesn't revolve around us, and we have to be strategic about these things.
We are the world. We are the children.
Biden, taking over is somewhat of the equivalent of like a pot business that takes over a home unbeknownst to the people and rents it. And then they leave, and you have mold in the walls. You have to tear down everything. The Trump is just trying to destroy everything on the way out.
What a strange metaphor.
I don't know why I thought of that.
Allan, I'm glad that you mentioned that with such painstaking detail as well. But a few nights ago, did you hear about out in southern Ontario, visible from Detroit, there was like a double orange mushroom cloud?
Oh yeah, that's the giant grow operation in Leamington.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Everyone talks about that. It's really, and it's amazingly. It seems to be very bigger than last year.
It looks like it's right across Lake St. Clair. It's actually on the shore of Lake Erie near Leamington, by Point Pelee.
Yeah, and it's not just marijuana; it's also
the tomatoes. Lots of tomatoes.
I have to leave the city from time to time where you all are seeing mushroom clouds. What is happening?
It's very weird. It's like this. It's
a glow. It's more of a glow.
Did a story about it last winter, and people notice it in winter because it gets dark earlier. And it's this insane greenhouse operation, and it's this golden light. And depending on the cloud cover, it either sometimes the clouds will pick it up and disperse it even more.
Wow.
But sometimes you get that double mushroom cloud effect.
Well,
it's like the Southern Lights.
Yeah,
it is. It is. And the interesting thing about it is that people don't know this, but Leamington, Ontario was the Canadian home of Heinz ketchup. Those are massive. They started out as massive tomato growing operations to feed that plant. Mm-hmm. And now, of course, some of them have been taken over by the marijuana industry, but who knows? Speaking of pot, they're taking a vote in Congress today in the House. The U.S. House is taking a vote to decriminalize marijuana. Mitch McConnell has already said he won't even bring it to the floor in the Senate, which means that, we're still not going to see the expungements we need for the federal crimes and stuff like that. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that to people's attention. That's actually happening today. But for the people who are actually involved in the pot industry, there's a lot at stake here. It's still a cash only business, which is really, really stupid.
Well, and it's dangerous too. I mean, that's what makes retail retail pot sales so dangerous, because there's always cash. And from the stories I've heard,
well, Mitch apparently has still got, he's still got Reefer Madness in his playlist on Netflix.
He's got to protect his tobacco industry back home. But yeah. So.
All right. Well, we should move on here for just a second, because we've been going for a little while. COVID, my word, the numbers are awful. And, the governor, as you pointed out so eloquently yesterday on Twitter, Nancy, the governor, the choice of wardrobe she is wearing, she is putting out a lot of power right now, saying, do not mess with me. Because, in 1
week, did you see the Monday thing with the leather
straps?
It was like, she looked like Daenerys Targaryen, riding her dragon.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, she may need to go scorched earth, because I'm telling you, people are not paying attention. You've got, of course, the restaurant owner, Joe Vicari, and his wife, who put out this thing saying that restaurant owners should revolt and oppose this indoor dining ban, even though we're seeing massive numbers of infections in the state and across the country right now. They've since backed off of that a little bit. But you've got these people that just do not want to believe that this is really happening to us right now. We are so close to getting a rollout of a vaccine for the most vulnerable people. And if we just mask up for a few weeks, everybody, few weeks, we can start to wrap ourselves around this. But Candice, I mean, I'm watching people who are saying, I don't care if they come with a vaccine. I'm not taking that stuff. What is behind this unwillingness in your thought as to why people won't be willing to take this vaccine?
Yeah. So some of this is just, it comes down to trust in institutions, right? We know in general, we have a lack of trust in institutions and across the board, right? But for some communities, it is tied to very specific historic practices that have happened. For African Americans, there are stories that people can reach to that specifically reach to harm done through vaccination testing, right? And so some of these things are baked in legacy, but also there is, when you have a federal government that is unwilling to get on board with this pandemic and what is happening and the science behind this, I mean, the harm of that, from one, people just not wearing a mask. Like, we can't get people to put a mask on. And now we're going to ask them to put a needle in their arm. TikTok is full of conservative white women making videos about how they're about to be microchipped through this vaccine. I mean, this is like a real thing that is happening. And I'm like, what do they think happens at Walgreens? It's a Walgreens. Nobody's microchipping you at a Walgreens. And so it's like this, we take these things that folks are getting on Parler, and they get sussed out into every atmosphere of where we are. And now you've got people saying that they're being microchipped and all of these crazy conspiracies.
You're already microchipped, everybody. See this thing I'm holding right here?
Thank you.
You're already
Candice,
microchipped. Every single thing you do and say when you have this with you is being recorded somewhere.
I have a Google speaker in every room of my house. They know everything about me. I'm good.
But I mean, come on. I mean, if you have pedophilia rings running out of pizza joints, I mean, why can't Walgreens be microchipping us? Yeah.
Well, the QAnon thing about Joe Biden having that little thing on his foot right now is the rumor is that he was arrested and he's got a monitor.
He's got an ankle bracelet.
Yeah.
He's covering it up.
It's
nice. He's got a tether.
Yeah.
But I think I find it amusing that 3 former presidents have said that we're going to go live on air to take the vaccine. George W. Bush, Clinton, and Obama. Bush requested it to be done through a beer bong. But I mean, it's. I don't think it's really going to matter. I think that the institution of the presidency as a whole probably isn't really seen in very really high regard as it is, and those people who are still suspicious are going to remain suspicious.
Let me tell you something. I am happy to grow the vaccine tail if it means that I can get out of this house. I volunteer as tribute. I will go up first. I will go with the president. Take me now.
Dude, a friend said the other day, well, I'm worried. Well, you know what? Somebody could die from it. I'm saying, well, someone could die from it, or look at COVID, where 2,600 people are dying every day. Go for the sure thing or the possibility.
That's right. The 10 people who I knew at the beginning of this year who are not here today because they died of COVID are very real to me. Those are real family members, real friends. And like this idea that there are people who still think that this isn't real is such a sad and dangerous game that we are playing.
Well, and just look at the numbers in the hospitalizations right now. And you see these facilities at capacity in a number of locations. And people are still saying, well, they could just be people in there for other reasons. Well, yes. But normally when you have it, your hospitals are at, 50, 60% capacity at the worst of times. We're talking 90, 95% capacity. That tells me that something is causing people to go to the hospital.
99% of Detroit receiving as of last night. 99%.
That's a level 1 trauma center. I mean, they need those beds.
I need to point out the racism behind this too. Just as in the election, the only possible explanation for Donald Trump losing is black people cheated. Then it's with COVID, it's like, this can't possibly be happening because only black people are dying, or we don't believe that black people are dying, or they must have died of something else, or, they got a lot of comorbidities, blah, blah, blah. And it's just, it's like
Americans have a lot of comorbidities.
Yeah, it's America. I did notice that the tide against the orders and so forth in Michigan turned when it began to become clear who was suffering most from this illness. And it's like, once it was, it's only killing black people. It's like, why don't we all get back to work then? It's just, I can't.
That's like when people. That's like when people started to realize what rap lyrics were about when it hit the suburbs. So,
I have to say though, as bad as COVID is, and it is bad, and I'm wearing the good masks now. I was looking at the numbers in the New York Times today. South Dakota.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord. That place.
You mean with the governor there?
Yeah.
Nancy, it's 10% of their population is testing positive.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I would fill up in Iowa with 3 masks on if I was driving across there, and then just never even open the window.
Seriously.
All the way at I-90.
The most sobering image I saw was in a hospital. They had iPads set up on these devices, these stands. And these were all for ICU patients so that they could be in touch with their family because they couldn't see them.
Right.
I mean, and our poor healthcare workers who are taking the brunt of all of this. And so I was listening to a piece yesterday where a head of a hospital was saying, it's not that we don't have enough beds. We don't have enough people to staff those beds.
Right.
Because their staff is going out.
Yeah. And it's not exactly easy to recruit people to the healthcare field right now. And like I said, we are getting close. We are getting close. People just need to be patient a little bit longer. Yeah. Do the right damn thing. There's a sign behind me that says wear a damn mask. And that's, just wear the damn mask. Like I said, it's the only fashion accessory we have right now.
It's all
Nobody wears ties anymore. I mean, make a statement with your mask. I've got a nice Grateful Dead one I like a whole bunch. I've got some that are a little bit more dressy. Just be yourself with one of these masks. But
it's bad.
Okay, well, we should probably move on to Schmuck of the Week because we have been going for quite a while. And Candice, you're new to this whole thing. Mm-hmm. The only rule that we have is that the Schmuck of the Week cannot be Donald Trump because we named the trophy after him. It is the Donald J. J stands for Genius Schmuck of the Week Award. That's what it is. So it cannot be Trump because we figured out early on that it was going to be him every single week. And it was just too easy. So who wants to go first this week? I'm not going to put Candice on the spot yet. Saeed, why don't I? Nancy and Allan both got their hands up. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first, just Nancy. Because mine's a quick one and we already talked about it. I'm going with House Oversight Committee Chairman Representative Matt Hall. And
Mr.
just
Gavel
and his gavel of justice. So,
and his gavel of justice. It almost sounds like a porn movie.
All right, Allan, I defer to you.
I'll go to one of the more obvious ones, Rudy Giuliani, who just brought his circus to town and really is become such a disgraceful figure from a man who, if you could call him a hero from 9/11, who was really showing leadership during the 9/11 attacks, and now has just become a joke and a $2,000 an hour joke.
Absolutely.
Well, thankfully, Allan, he didn't show more than that in Borat 2 or in the hearings. But I will segue from Giuliani and his circus to one of his circus clowns as my schmuck of the week, and that is Hima Reddy, the Indian-American naturalized citizen, Republican precinct delegate, and election observer at the TCF Center who testified in front of that circus with that wonderful statement that although everyone thinks apparently that all Indians look alike, she thinks all Chinese people look alike. That just was astounding in its racism and its depth.
And she said, yeah, so when a chow vote,
Chow.
Yeah, we got all these chows. I'm like,
and I don't think she meant dogs. I mean, and the whole idea then that if she thinks every Chinese person looks alike, then that means she probably thinks every ballot looks alike when she was observing them, because that's her eyesight.
Yeah, oh boy. Let's see. All right, Candice, who do you got?
I am going with Miss Parlor 2020, Melissa Carone. Also, my favorite. She was my favorite hearing guest star. I mean, her commitment to white clawing throughout the day is something that should be praised, quite honestly. And the sort of messy bun look she decided to go with, all of it was a full package for me, and I enjoyed it.
Yes. She went full Karen, but I like it. She went full White Claw. I think that's the new thing. We're not going to call them Karens anymore. Now they're White Claws.
You may make it on SNL this weekend.
Well, I mean, the fact that she was basically the character, the woman you don't want to have a conversation with at the party from Saturday Night Live. Right. And the fact that those videos went out there within 15 minutes of her finishing up her testimony is just a testament to the greatness of the internet.
Absolutely. All right. I mean, the internet is undefeated.
I've got a couple, and as host, I have some leeway here. My first one is, of course, going to be Sidney Powell, who, of course, is one of the Trump attorney types. They're actually encouraging people not to vote in the Georgia runoff because they say the elections are bad. So please follow their advice, Republicans in Georgia. It's a rigged election. You're already going to lose. So just don't show up this time around and see how that works out.
Or at least go and vote in Edison County, Michigan.
Well, that's the Republicans' suppression. Now it hasn't worked on the Democrats. Now they're just going to turn on their own. And
there's another guy that what is his name? I got to find his name real quick. And I will. So bear with me for 1 second because Saeed, this guy's in Florida.
My vacation home is in Edison.
Oh, very good. Okay, so an attorney in Florida. Now we hear all this thing about fraudulent elections and how this election was stolen. Well, there's a guy in Florida. He's an attorney there, which is the dumb thing. This guy basically tried to register to vote in Georgia just so he could fraudulently vote in the Georgia election and vote in favor of Perdue and Loeffler there. That is actual voter fraud. That's the kind of stuff that people are actually trying to do that they should not be able to do. So that guy's one of them. But I got to save the best for last here, because who would have thought this would have ended badly? The Naughty in Nolans swingers event took place this week. 300 randy revelers went there, and many of them have now tested positive for COVID-19. Yeah. Interestingly enough, they had the opening reception for this event, and apparently they kept socially distant and wore masks. But it is a swingers convention. And they were saying, well, maybe this year at the convention, we should make this more of a monogamous event.
It's hard to perform oral sex with a mask on. Okay, come on.
It did not work. And imagine that. Imagine of the 300 attendees, I think some 50 something now have tested positive for COVID. So despite their pleas to make it a monogamous swingers event, which seems oxymoronic. Anyway, so imagine that. Those are my schmucks of the week. The Naughty in Nolans Swingers Club.
Well, at least now they've got a vaccine for COVID. I don't know about what else they caught there, but
Yeah, it's just a cookies and long haulers.
That's right. That's right. There's going to be multiple shots here. Oh boy. Anyway, all right. That's going to have to do it for today, I think. I want to thank Candice Fortman for being here from Outlier Media.
It was
Fantastic
a pleasure.
job. Welcome. We'll have you back for sure.
Thank
and again,
you.
give that number. People can text this to get up-to-date news on COVID and all the sorts of stuff going on in the city. What is it?
It is text Detroit to 73224. That's Detroit to 73224.
All right. I think you guys are doing some really, really cool work there. And thanks for that. Saeed Khan, of course, an old friend of mine, longtime lecturer at Wayne State University and frequent guest when we need to talk about important, smart stuff that's going on in the world. Saeed, thank you. I always appreciate it.
great to be here again.
Nancy Derringer, thank you for being here once again as well and putting up with me as you do every week. I appreciate
That's part
that.
of my Friday. Always.
Oh, well, good. And Allan Lengel, of course. Get better, sir. You've got a few more weeks to go with that knee surgery, but hey.
6 more weeks with the brace.
And so that means that you will get to
stay home safely.
My name's ML Elric. I'm an investigative reporter and a connoisseur of fine yogurts. I know a little bit about Detroit. I know a little bit about deadlines, and I'm asking you to become a member of DeadlineDetroit.com. Like me, I'm not asking you to do anything I wouldn't do. I'm making a monthly donation. My wife is making a monthly donation. I know that seems redundant, but they need the money, and the money goes to a good place. Getting the story out, getting the truth out. Because if we don't support local journalism, there's some people a couple blocks away from here who are going to get away with a whole bunch of stuff that's going to cost you a whole lot more than just a few bucks out of your pocket every month. Go to DeadlineDetroit.com, become a member. You'll see it's really easy at the top of the website. Give early, give often, give generously. Just give a damn. That's the best way I know how.
The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davison, Lynette's is open for takeaway noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's.